So today I've challenged myself to do 100 miles on my hardtail, and it's the longest day of the year, the summer solstice, so hopefully we'll have enough light for it. Let's see what happens. Today I'm attending the Solstice 100-mile off-road challenge, starting from Northampton and circling some of England's finest bridleways, cycle paths and forest tracks. There is over 1,800 metres of climbing in this loop, and it will be one of the longest bike rides I've ever done off-road, so wish me luck. Now, if it's your first 100-mile loop, then try to keep it simple. Keep the elevation to an amount you're comfortable with, and keep the terrain relatively smooth so it's easier going. I've got myself some energy powder for along the way. There's also some in my water bottles already, and I've stuffed about 4 energy bars into there as well, and I will be loading up along the way. Now obviously you want a multi-tool with you, chain breaker and some quick links. People always forget that, but if you break a chain in the middle of nowhere, you're going to need that. Obviously puncture repair, whatever you need. So I'm running tubeless, so I've got a couple of tubeless plugs. I've also got a spare tube as well, just in case anything goes terribly wrong. I always bring some sort of wet wipes, a battery for my GoPro, obviously, influencing. And I've got a waterproof jacket as well. Now the rain is forecast for about an hour. I would bring this anyway because it's a nice warm layer if the weather turns, even if it's not going to rain. If you're ever riding in the mountains for your big challenge, then remember that 1,000 meters up can be 10 degrees cooler than down in the valley. So having a spare layer is just really sensible. Also, don't forget a pump. I always bring CO2 for emergencies, but a pump will never run out. And finally, you don't think you always need this in the UK, but some sun cream is an absolute must. Today, I've chosen to carry all my tools and snacks in my Camelback Chase Race 4, as it's very light for a backpack and the airy mesh straps are going to be a bonus in today's heat. And it has this handy phone pocket on the front for all those photos I'm going to take. And it usually has a 1.5 litre water bladder in it, but today I've chosen to carry all my water in the Camelback Podium bottles, as I find it easier to monitor my water intake that way, which is going to be key. Anything else? No, that's about it. Well, I suppose we better get going. I've joined this event today because it's a motivator to just join an event and have other people around you. And that is one of my biggest tips, apart from fueling and pacing, is you need motivation. So take a mate out with you if you're planning it yourself, so then you're committed to it, or join an event like this so you can just follow a route. Maybe it's plotted on a Garmin for you already, it's taken the headache out of it, and there's loads of people around you to keep you going. And yeah, I think the chatting is also very helpful. Makes you ignore the pain in the legs. Let's go slap some ruts. I've been going up into zone 3 and 4 mainly because there's been a headwind, but this is something that I will keep an eye on throughout a long ride. I don't mind going up into zone 3 and 4 a couple of times when it's kind of inevitable, like climbing or into a headwind. That's fine, but you don't want to spend your whole time there. 100 miles is no joke. My pace is between 10 and 15 miles an hour at the moment. So if you're averaging 10 miles an hour, that's 10 hours in the saddle. Anything over 2 hours, you need to remember 2 main things: fueling and pacing. So fueling and pacing, let's talk about pacing. So I've talked about being in zone 3 and zone 4 a couple of times throughout this ride, but I will try to stick in zone 2. So that is 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. Now there's calculators online. My Garmin actually gives me an estimate and tells me what percentage I'm in. And that means that I can just keep an eye on that and try and stay in that zone. And what that does, it should be a pace that you can stand all day and not wear yourself out too quickly. If you were to do it in zone 3 or zone 4 all day, you will burn out within a couple of hours depending on your fitness level. So seeing as this is an all-day ride, zone 2 is the one. The second most important thing is fueling. So it's pretty standard recommendations to have about 60 grams of carbs per hour. Now, if you want to be really elite, you can work out how many carbs you need per kilogram of body weight and be really specific. But obviously this kind of adjusts with the more effort that you put in, the more you will burn. So I've got 60 grams of carbohydrate powder in my water bottle. I've got 2 of them here. So I want to be consuming that within the first 2.5 to 3 hours, and then also consuming some solid food as well. It's 25 miler. Rick, we're almost there. We get to the get to the 30-mile feed station and get some real food on. So the great thing about joining an organised event is that you often get fueling stations along the way to help make sure that you do actually fuel. And if you're trying to stick to that 60 to 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour, and you don't have any powder like I do, then what 60 grams looks like is about 4 bananas or half a sandwich, or about 200 grams of mixed fruit and nuts. So yeah, it's quite a lot to go. Right now, I feel pretty peppy, I feel pretty good. But you'll notice as you go along, if you start feeling weary, if you start feeling tired, if you start getting angry, or you just hate your bike, or you hate this ride, or you wish you weren't there, chances are you're hangry. So you're hungry and you haven't eaten enough. So monitor yourself, keep on top of those miles, that heart rate, the fuel, all of it, and review it as you go along. And it'll give you something to think about while you're out in the saddle for 10 hours. Oh, this is really bumpy now. Okay, so my advice on bikes is choose the one that you are most comfortable on. Now that seems obvious, but what it means is you should be able to do more than 2 hours riding on your bike. So go out and practice on your bike 2 hours in zone 2 and make sure it's actually comfortable before you do a big challenge like this. So for me, I've actually upgraded to an e-bike saddle because I find it really supportive when I'm sat down for long periods of time. And I've also upgraded to 2 water bottles because this is usually my XC race bike, but obviously I want as much carbohydrates and as much water as possible. And I've also added a few tools, so I've got my Toe Peak tubeless puncture repair system up here, so I can access it really quickly rather than going into my Camelback. And in terms of setup, everything is exactly the same because I know it works. I may have gone a little over my usual tyre pressure. I've gone to about 20 and 21 PSI where I'm usually at 18, 19 for racing, but that's just a little bit of safety PSI, and also it means I'll have slightly faster rolling tyres for all of the gravel around here. Anyway, enough waffle, let's get on with it. So Rick's got a puncture. It won't take us long to fix it because luckily he's tubeless and he topped up that sealing before he came out here. So that is another top tip, is make sure your bike is in peak condition. It's serviced, it's running, tubeless sealing is full if that's what you use. And make sure you have spares as well. Oh, so we're nearly at the 50-mile mark, so like halfway, and the route's taking us through a trail centre, and it's a good reminder to sort of stick these things in the middle or somewhere along the way just to keep things interesting. If gravel pathways aren't your vibe, then adding a section through a trail centre or including some fun descents can boost morale and give you some extra motivation to continue onwards. Okay, so I've told you how to ride a 100-mile route, but why would you bother? I mean, why wouldn't you? Look at this place. I mean, hopefully I'm inspiring you to try something, because it's just about getting out and seeing the scenery. And for me personally, it was about challenging myself and pushing myself just to remind myself that I can. But it also is a good motivator to keep getting out on the bike, because you know you need to train for this, you know you need to be prepared, and that's usually a good thing. It's just a little motivator in life. But anyway, it's gorgeous, isn't it? Let's go. Oh my days, what an absolutely glorious day. 100 miles in the saddle. Actually it was a tiny bit more than that, it was actually 109. But I feel all right, not too bad. I really stayed on top of that fueling, so if you're gonna do that, or do a challenge like this, make sure you eat loads and appreciate that I can't quite talk properly anymore. You won't be able to string a sentence together after doing this, but you will feel great for having done it. Guys, I'm waffling, so give me a big like if you want to see presenters like myself do more challenges like this and help you out with your own along the way. Have I inspired you? Let me know down in the comments below. Have you got any challenges coming up? Or do you think maybe you'd give a century a go yourself? I don't know. Anyway, it's time for some dinner.